What's going on, everybody? All right, we're here for a brand new episode of the Tom Castro Shooting Academy Next Level Podcast. I have a very special, two actually special guests on this episode. So we're going to talk about USPSA versus IPSC. Quite a few guys have been asking me about doing the IPSC versus USPSA since we're getting ready to IPSC Nationals here in Florida. So I want to bring on my two special guests, Mr. Mason Lane and Mr. Matt Hopkins. What's going on, Mason? How you doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Good. So first time, Mason, Matt, this is the second time, I think, right?
Yeah.
In 2 weeks. Matt's like, he's
two in a row.
He's on there. He's crushing it now.
One more, I'm a co-host, I think.
That's right. Yeah. There it is. So that would get all spicy and get all the politics of USPSA going again, huh?
Last one I did got banned, so I'd be careful.
Oh my Lord. All right. So, we'll get it started. So the first things first is obviously there's some differences in rules in IPSC and USPSA. So the first thing I talk about is basically I have my experience for IPSC has always been in the United States. I haven't had a chance to travel a whole lot. So I'm going to kind of follow along with these guys. I have a few questions you guys asked. They have some stuff to bring up, but the main thing is I want to talk about their experience in IPSC and really where it comes down to how it's going to affect your shooting at the match here in America. This match in America is, do you guys remember how many stages they gave us for this one? I think it's only 12, right? It's a smaller match compared to usual.
I think it's going to be more than that. I think I saw something like 16, but
16?
That could be wrong.
16 is usually standard.
Okay. So well, I guess we'll start off with that. Is there a specific number for IPSC nationals that they have to make it nationals, or because USPSA doesn't have a rule on how many stages they have, do they, for nationals?
No,
Not that
it's
I'm
just a
aware of.
recommendation.
It's just, okay. So that's good. I mean, I didn't know if they had a certain amount of small, medium, large courses that they had to do, right?
So they have restrictions on that breakdown within the match. Like if they have 6 stages, they have to break it down specifically 3, 2, 1, 3 small, 2 medium, 1 large.
Okay.
And then if they have it like off of that, like if they have 9 stages, they have another breakdown. It's kind of like 1, 1, 1 or something, or 2, 1. Something.
So the first thing they do is they have the first difference between USPSA and IPSC is definitely they are more restricted on what they can do in stages, correct?
Yes.
So they have so it's a small, medium, large, I guess we would call it.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So what are their round counts for, like, what are their restrictions on their round counts for that, for small? So a small stage is what?
Matt?
12 rounds. 12 rounds.
12 rounds on the small. And then what's the medium?
It's 24.
So 24. And then the next one's 32, right? Or up to 32.
Yep.
So then obviously they can vary whatever they want in there. It just has to be within that round count, underneath that round count, correct?
Yeah, it can't be over that round count to be within that designated stage type or size.
Yeah. This is one of the things where I think USPSA shooters, their experience with various size stages is frequently dictated by their experience at club matches. And their experience with smaller stages is usually something like a classifier or something very similar. Like, oh yeah, let's shoehorn these 2 very small stages into the same bay or something to that effect. And so I think folks get the wrong idea about how, the smaller stages work. Like they hear, okay, we're dictating how many rounds are allowed to be fired on a stage. They think, oh, I must not be doing a whole lot of shooting. And I think you'll find the raw times tend to average out to be relatively similar, even though the round counts are much smaller. And that tends to usually have the hit factors of the match be a lot more balanced as well. So when you go shoot an IPSC match, you don't have this perception like I'm doing half as much or a quarter as much shooting as I would in the same number of stages at a USPSA match, because you're on the clock for roughly the same amount of time. I think that's one of the differences that people definitely have kind of misconceptions about.
I know my experience so far here in America is, and I was actually extremely surprised when I did this. There was a couple stages that only had 9 rounds and I ran 40 yards and I was like, holy shit, this is a small course. Like I'm running a lot to get 9 shots off here. Like it was something that I was like, is this what IPSC is like? Because I enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed a speed shoot. I'll tell you that. I was like, oh, this is our sport. Like, this is just like our sport, but less rounds. Like, I actually feel like I still got the athleticism and the stage planning experience instead of just going, all right, cool, don't miss this popper so that the swinger doesn't go away, which is what we get a lot in USPSA.
Yep.
There's also, until previously, there was no restriction on number of shooting positions. USPSA just changed that this year, but IPSC never had that. So you'd have a 9-round stage with 4 shooting positions on it.
Yeah.
So you were restricted to 4 positions.
No.
Oh.
There is no limit.
Oh, okay, good. All right. So you can run around forever and find all these different spots, even if it was only a small amount of targets to shoot at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, would you say that they changed that in the wrong direction?
For USPSA?
Yeah.
No,
So
I think they went the right
basically,
direction on that.
so
There's no
USPSA
limit now.
limited.
No, they took the limit away.
Oh, good.
Okay.
USPSA previously had a limit, like you
Okay.
can't have more than 2 positions in a short course.
So they basically IDPA'd it originally.
Yes, and they took
Okay.
that restriction away. So now you
All
can have as many positions on a stage that you want, and only the number of rounds dictates the size of the stage.
Man, I hope that they opens up a lot more options at nationals. Like they could absolutely get rid of some of those double stages and just do something like that and open it up a little bit.
It's a culture thing, I think.
Yeah.
People go there expecting a certain number of rounds. Like we shot in 21 stages, way more rounds than we shot at iron sight, handgun, whatever, last nationals, than we did at EHC, which they maximized the round count there. Like they did all 12, all 24, all 32 for every single section. So they maximized that with 24 stages, and we shot significantly less in EHC than we did Iron Sight Nationals.
Yeah. Did I talked to I'm super interested in how you guys felt about the handgun nationals over there overseas, because I talked to Henning Wahlgren about his experience, and he had come back from shooting open, and I asked him, I said, man, how is that compared to here? And he goes, it was a great match. He goes, but I didn't have to aim very hard compared to this match. He goes, I don't think there was much past 15 yards. There wasn't a lot of far shots at that match compared to handgun nationals, which was, I think I said this in the last one, it was a hammer to the forehead. Like you didn't even have a chance to, shoot anything close. They didn't give you anything. So, and if they did, it was covered in penalty targets. So it was just interesting, the difference in the two. Like you literally left a handgun only place, and then you come back and it's like a completely different match. So I'm interested to how you guys compare those to what you shot from overseas to this match, which was, right after, I think a week after for you guys, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, it was, I think, talking to people at the match, at both matches, I think both matches were kind of calibrated in opposite directions, a little bit away from expectations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my experience with European IPSC is generally, it's very positionally particular. It's relatively technically demanding. Shot difficulty is higher than we're used to in USPSA, maybe not the highest, in Europe, probably not as high as it is in other parts of the world. But overall, you can expect a match that's going to average out to about a 4 factor and is going to require you to be good at getting good points, relatively quickly. It's not going to be a bullseye match, but there's not going to be a whole lot of posing. There'll be a little bit of it here and there. And then obviously the American match was the exact opposite of that. There was very few opportunities to shoot with, less sight confirmation or let loose. For the most part, every stage was kind of the same vibe. It was try to not put your foot in your mouth the whole way.
Do you feel like the hit factor, because you talk about that a lot, actually, and a lot of the stuff I watch you talk about. So about the high hit factors versus low hit factors. When you talk about the low hit factors or even mid hit factors, like a 6 or 7 or 8, do you feel like that kind of dictates the feel of the match? Like, obviously, I don't think most people design stages around what they think the hit factor will be, but when you see a match where there's a lot of 7 and 8 and 9 hit factors, do you think that's more of a technical match, when you see those kind of scores, or do you think it's, what would you say, like when you see that? Because I know this year, like I just shot a match and most of the hit factors were 8 or 7 and 8 hit factors because they were big stages. It took a lot to get around them.
I think whether or not people are aware of how that math works out and that its effect on their score, retroactively, they're going to make an observation about, whether or not they thought the match was fast paced or slow paced, and whether or not they thought it was balanced, as in, were their hit factors evenly distributed from the mid 3s all the way up to 10? And
Right.
to me, that is a hallmark of a really well balanced match, is when there's factors that are a little bit of everything. I need to be good at, locking down perfect points all the way, because it's a 3-factor. Every Charlie hits my score like 0.7, 0.8 seconds, or it's an 11 factor where it's, down to like 0.15 or less shooting minor. And I don't think necessarily people have that in their mind. Like the layman shooter probably maybe isn't thinking about, in terms of raw score, how much is this Charlie hurting my score? But whether or not people realize that does very much affect the difficulty of the match. Because how much white and black you put on targets, how far you put the targets, that's going to affect the likelihood of where people put the hits, and how many points are available in an average second. That's going to affect how much that affects their score. So even if people aren't aware of how that's affecting their score, it does very much affect the way the match works.
So do you feel like the scores for IPSC, or the way you shoot IPSC, is different because of the small, medium, large course? So the large course, you're probably going to get at it a little bit because you have more opportunities to get at it, and then your small and medium, you're a little more protective of your scores there.
Well, we talked about this a bit right in the beginning, right? So I mean, if you take, let's say we have a stage, we have a bay that's 40 by 40 yards. That's a big bay, right? We can agree on that.
Yeah.
If you put 14 rounds in that bay, the hit factor is going to be very different than if you put 32 rounds in that bay, of 100%. Course. So if you put a short course in a bay that has a raw time of 20 or more seconds, the hit factor is going to be 5 or less, pretty much no matter what, because you can only shoot so many alphas, and your time is going to be what it is. So yeah, it's by averaging, by mitigating, the overall round counts of the stages, you're naturally going to have that governor on where the hit factors are going to rest, and you're going to have a better balance for the most part of what hit factors are required of you, to shoot, or like your management of raw points on the stages is going to be tested a little bit more than if there's no such requirement. And that's not to say that USPSA doesn't do a good job of balancing those for the most part. I think, especially over the last 3 years, the nationals in particular have gotten better and better. I think it's fair to say this last one that most of us shot was probably a little biased on the side of accuracy, but for the most part, those matches are balanced well as well.
Yeah, I noticed some of the smaller stages. So this match obviously had a lot of long shots, but when I got to the smaller stages, I started thinking, like, there's only so many points here, and because they're so close, I can't be stupid and just send rounds. So I really had to think about it. And I remember at nationals, and PCC nationals was the big one. There were 2 stages that were stacked on top of each other. There was you started on a table and seated, and it was an unloaded start. And I walked up to that stage and I was like, I think this is 60 points. You got to shoot alphas. Of course, I didn't get what I wanted. I was like, God dang it. And even my time was slow because I was over aiming. So I was like, well, I overthought that one a little bit. And then I go to the next stage and I shoot all alphas on a stage that I probably could have got away with a few Charlies, but I was like, oops, I reversed that one a little bit. But I was like, I'm starting to see these smaller stages as don't lose the match, right? I'm starting to change my mindset. So now going into IPSC, I'm thinking, all right, I have to carry that over for possibly, half the match with the smaller stages like that. So it's a little bit different mindset. And I think most people don't think of scores like that in general in USPSA, because when you come away from a bunch of 32 round stages, it's just hammer down, right? Like most of the time.
And like the shorthand that I use, and I don't want to monopolize our time talking about this stuff, but it's
what you're here for, bro.
A raw point is worth 0.2 at a 5-factor. And it's half of that, of course, at a 10-factor. So basically, in layman's terms, shooting minor, a Charlie on a 5-factor stage costs 0.4, right? And you can math that out like in each direction to figure out how much raw points are going to cost you. And you can kind of loosely estimate your factor by estimating your raw time and how many points it's possible to get at your skill level, and know how that's going to affect you. But I think a lot of people think that's witch science, and it's really not. If you have that cheat code, you can figure it out pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, because you're going to have an average of what you think the time is on that stage by either other shooters or just kind of walking through that pace. You can kind of go, okay, this is probably an 8 to 10 second stage kind of feeling. So it just depends on what, and you have to kind of pay it. I'm starting to pay a lot more attention to the math than I ever did before. So the whole go out there and just shoot for fun mindset didn't work when I needed the points. So I was like, I got to start changing. I might have to start actually doing some math against these guys that are really good. So, Matt, what about you, man? How'd you feel about the difference between the 2 matches? And you actually helped design the American match. So I'm interested to see how you felt like the variations?
So I think the EHC match was kind of biased due to stage base size. Each stage basically was the same width, same distance. And they weren't that deep and they weren't that far, like 15, 20 yards maximum. I think there's only a handful of bays that had shots longer than that. And I think like the EHC match was largely dependent on the bays they had. Like they had a whole set of 6 bays that were, I'd say, more normal, like 25-yard wide, 40, 50 yards deep that they could have used up in the upper section, but they didn't use those. They used those for like vendors and side stages.
Gotcha.
And another thing, you will never, I can't remember if I've ever seen two stages in one bay at
IPSC
match.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, Mason?
Yeah. So at Extreme Hero, they do that, but they do it a little different where basically you do a hot movement. Like you make ready for the next stage and then report to the back. In a case where they have 25-yard wide and like 75-yard deep bays. So you can shoot 2 stages in the same amount of time it would take you to shoot a 32-round stage. But that's an exception to the rule in my experience.
So do they just to keep you hot from the first stage to the so you would shoot the front one or the back one first, then walk up, or vice versa?
Yes. So the uprange one you shoot, and then you walk downrange, and the score is totally patched, scored, and set to go by the time you're finished the second stage.
I got you.
And
awesome.
The other thing with EHC, I think that they were trying to manage was they were adopting a new schedule format where they did 4 relays in a day. So basically, you were shooting 6 stages in 2.5 hours.
Yes.
And my sort of anecdotal impression was they were scared to have a clog by having very complicated stages or by having difficult stages with lots of movers and stuff. So they tried to manage some of that risk by making the stages a little bit faster paced or easier, if you will. And I would expect that, seeing how well that format worked, as long as their props and stuff are working well, that they'll probably go to increasing that more. In addition to the fact that the ranges were a bit small, or at least a bit uniform, you could say.
Henning said the same exact thing. I talked to him this weekend in Texas, and I talked to him about the match, and he said the exact same thing. He goes, the schedule, he goes, dude, it was like a vacation. He's like, you were on the range. You were barely on the range. It didn't feel like you were even there to shoot a match. He goes, we vacationed the whole time. He said it was crazy.
If they don't continue that, it'll be a huge mistake by IPSC.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool because I saw a lot of your pictures, Mason, and I was like, Jesus, is he taking like a month off or some shit? Like he's not ever shooting. I was like, and now it makes sense. And after Henning, I never put 2 and 2 together until we brought it up. And I was like, oh, that's how he got all those damn pictures and actually got a real vacation out of that trip. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. He was like, yeah, you'd come in. He said you'd come in the afternoon, and he's like, I'm done. Like, oh shit. It's like I going home already. It's like, so it was just kind of interesting that. And I think that, could we do that in the States, or is it too difficult because of our stage designs?
I mean, my personal opinion is they managed to do that because of the size of the stages and not because of any of the logistical advantages they have. So I've discussed this in the past. I've been shooting IPSC matches at least annually since 2017. And I've shot Extreme Hero, for example, with and without staff reset, and they still managed to turn out 10 stages in a half day. And even with competitor reset, if you have those smaller stages with just less targets to manage, less potential for mistakes, the match still will go fast. So yeah, I think it is possible. I would hate to see the stages get dumbed down just to make that happen, but I do think it is at a minimum possible. I think a more modest goal may be to do more stages within a half-day format. I definitely think that is doable.
Instead of the 6 that we do now, so do like an 8 or something like that. It would cover up a lot more time, or you get more of the match over with, or whatever it is at one shot, or
get to shoot more stages.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard in USPSA. So you said they did that with without staff reset though at EHC Extreme.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
I honestly think that some of our issues in America is the big stages. So this happened to me this weekend at the match we were at. The big stage that we were on, it was so spread out. It wasn't compact at all. So, I mean, you can get a 32-round stage without having a football field or 2 of a stage, right? But this stage had 3 boxes. It was giant. And they didn't do it in split scoring because of the lack of experience with some of their newer ROs, which was fine, except for that takes a long time. And that's kind of where even with 3 or 4 staff that were helping pace, even though it wasn't a staff reset match, they was still taking us quite a bit to turn the stage. And that had 0 steel, 0 activators. So again, I think our issue is when we make big stages in our sport, we make like stage 18 at Handgun Nationals was effing ridiculous. Like that shit took forever to reset, but not just to reset, but to score. Like we were over there putting all the steel was all up and the guy was just getting to the last 32-yard or 34-yard target to call it. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, like this is taking a long time to paste. And again, I'm glad I didn't work that match. That would have been shit. I walked 20,000+ steps at that match, just resetting per day. So I was just like, man, what are the ROs walking? So I think some of our issue is the size of our 32 round stages or our larger stages. We put football fields up. It's crazy.
It's the pre-scoring thing is actually, that's kind of a good segue, because that's one of the things that I think people don't necessarily anticipate when they go to shoot IPSC matches. Is irrespective of the size of the stage, if you pass a target, like you go down range past a target that you've already shot, they will have it scored and patched before you get a chance to look at it. And this is kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing, because there's very little chance for any real legitimate arbitration or discussion about the score, and a lot of details do get missed when there's no individual competitor and RO present scoring of every single target. And it requires that you and your bros that are shooting the match police those folks pretty hard. And whether it's through just ambition to get the match done on time or other reasons, a lot of the time details do get missed in that way. So that's one of the things I would honestly say is dramatically better about the USPSA experience, is that the competitor RO relationship is way more friendly, and the focus between 2 of those groups is definitely more on getting the correct score, even if it takes a little bit longer. Where we talked just a bit before the pre-show, you could probably say that's not necessarily everyone's on the same page about that at your average IPSC match. The focus is on getting through the match as fast as possible, and I think it's fair to say the competitor RO culture is a bit more, I would say, adversarial in IPSC than it is in America. And I don't think people necessarily anticipate that when they go to shoot.
Do you think it's because those guys are paid, correct? Like it's more of a professional feeling organization. Like it's us versus them kind of mindset, maybe. Again, I've heard that IPSC, the ROs get paid. They're not paid like professionally to do that only, correct? They're actually like just like us, but then they get paid to come to the matches.
I don't know about their compensation. That could be one reason, but I know part of the reason from what I've observed is there's way more cheating for inches on the behalf of IPSC shooters in general. And the culture, how do I put this? I bully people a lot in America to not cheat for inches, because I feel whether or not you're aware of it, you're contributing to the competitor culture. And I think you should fight for the score that's correct, whether or not you like it. And the IPSC culture is pretty far in the opposite direction of that. The culture is more so, if you can pull a fast one on the ROs, then that's sort of your prerogative to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And because the ROs anticipate a lot of shenanigans, they toe a pretty hard bargain.
Yeah,
that would be my observation.
Definitely true.
I follow that as well.
To me that everybody else is going to do that, so you have to do it to stay on the same level.
That's trash.
It's trash, but it's
that's exactly how the sport gets tainted. Honestly, like it drives. I've been watching that very, 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 very closely lately. And I truly believe that to say that we have competitive equity in our sport it's a good dream. It's not. There's a lot of things that I've been seeing that I'm just like, oh, how convenient that we didn't throw that stage out because of we didn't want to lose it at a major match. And we're talking a big match, that we pay $300 to go to, that could make or break somebody's national championship hopes that have been busting their ass for it. So it's interesting. It's just, unfortunately, it's how it works. So
all you can do in those situations is be polite and fight for what's correct, and don't be apologetic about it. Lots of people, especially like folks that are not really in it because they think they're going to win anything. They feel reluctant to stand up for what they think is correct because they think, well, it's not my position to edit how someone else behaves, or, oh, I'm not in contention for a win, so I'm not going to argue
Right.
this. And it's like, if you know the rules, you should be arguing for the score, whether or not it's yours, making sure that the correct score is achieved at all times. And if you do that, like in good faith, then you're doing your part to make sure the culture of our sport here is correct. And whether or not you want to do that at IPSC matches, I guess is kind of up to you. That's sort of a lesser problem. I look at it like I said a moment ago, whether or not you realize that you are contributing to the competitor culture in the sport that you're in. So here, where I compete 99% of the time, I'm going to make sure that it's as right as possible.
Yeah, so I stopped arguing for shooters, but for what I started doing instead, because I caught myself like constantly lawyering for somebody else that didn't seem to care. So what I do now is I go, hey, buddy, you might want to come check this and call for an overlay. And if they don't want it, then okay, cool. But I'm like, hey, I think this, you might want to look at it. And then I walk away because I caught myself like constantly going, hey. And I'm like, well, if he doesn't want to come over here and walk this, it's funny because that happened to me at the match this weekend. I shot a target and it wasn't even close. Like it was 2 Charlies all day long. And I said to the guy, I said, what, you're going to give me what I shot? And he was so like, he thought I was arguing. I mean, they weren't even close. He thought I was arguing at first. And I know the guy, he's a super great guy. And then we go to the next target and he must've thought he was thinking about what I shot over there. And he goes, Alpha Charlie. And I go, whoa. And then I was like, no, I had 2 deltas. I had an alpha and 2 deltas. And he goes, I go, I know, I got you from the last one. I said, that's a delta. And he's like, you son of a bitch. I was like, sorry, man. I just wanted to have a little fun with you. I was like, you guys are out here in this hot ass Texas heat. You got to have a little fun. So
even to make a little comment, the relationship between like competitors and ROs has gotten better in IPSC over the course of that I've been shooting it. So it has been way worse.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Matt, do you have a specific example of that you could think of that's not too spicy to drop for no reason?
The ROs openly made fun of competitors like in the early teens. Yes. And there was nothing done about it.
Yeah, that's too bad, man. I know it's definitely still a long way from where we'd like it to be. Like I think people in America kind of sometimes get really hard on American ROs and they have no idea how good they have it. Like, and I don't want to just start busting on matches, but like, for example, the most recent World Shoot, there was a stage where there was an activating target that was clearly different from competitor to competitor. Like it behaved completely differently based on how it was set or whatever factor. And it dramatically changed, the difficulty of the shot, but depending on when you chose to engage the target. And I threw a complete fit. And like begged the RM to come over, went up one side of the RO and down the other because he was not interested in my debate whatsoever. Because of course I shoot the stage in the last day and they're like, oh, well, 4 other days of competitors haven't complained about it. What's the problem? And I complained to 2 different RMs and I couldn't even get them to address the fact that there was an issue. So it's way, way worse in terms of the competitive equity in the RO relationship in IPSC than it is in USPSA. And frankly, it's something you have to be aware of and ready for when you show up there. Like you have to try to ingratiate yourself as best as possible to the presenting RO and try to just make friends with them, try to get through unscathed. It's kind of like IDPA in that way, honestly. Like you have to just kind of roll with the punches.
So they have the same ROs that'll travel around to all these big matches. You'll see the same people.
That's what I was going to ask. That's exactly what my question was. Do you think we're going to see those type of ROs at IPSC Nationals in America, or do we tend to have more of American ROs? And then I know they have some mixed in because we did at the Extreme this year at the beginning of the year, but that match definitely didn't go as well as they thought, or it would have, but it was one of those last minute, hey, finally, we're going to be able to do this after 3 years of signing up. And because I went through COVID and everything, and I feel like they just did not have enough help at that match, but that's one of my extreme experiences.
I think it'll be more like Pan American.
Yeah.
Which wasn't good.
I think they're going to have some that come in, but it's not going to be like a World Shoot hosted here where all of them come in.
I got you.
I think you'll still have a bunch of NROI ROs there.
Okay.
That aren't IPSC ROs.
So we should have more of that, I guess, that American experience of having a better RO experience shooter. We should not have that.
Yeah.
The European feel of it's us versus them kind of feeling.
Yeah, I think anywhere overseas we kind of get that. So
yeah. I'm actually hoping this year to, or next year, I'm going to try to do the Czech match. I haven't had a chance to go to that yet. So, but unfortunately, they keep putting Carry Optics Nationals and that match right on top of each other. This year I couldn't go, and I was going to go this year, but Carry Optics Nationals was the same exact weekend. So doesn't work out too well. Okay, so speaking of traveling, let's get into that subject because I actually have a couple questions. Originally, I wasn't going to talk about this, but somebody asked a question. So now I want to ask a couple of my own questions about it as well. How hard is it to, let's start with this. How far out do you plan for that kind of a match? So let's start with the Extreme Handgun Nationals that you guys just went to overseas. How long did you guys plan on to schedule that? How long did it take you to get all your paperwork done? And what kind of hoops did you have to jump through to get that done?
Well, I think we're casually planning years out. Like you're at least like kind of planning like, oh, I want to go to this a year out. Something like that. And like right now, people are planning to go to the World Shoot. Like you're kind of planning that in your head, if not casually looking around and like trying to get acclimated to like what the area is, and maybe like roughly look at like what the gun rules are to get in and out. Like I think a year out is probably minimum you need to. Yeah. I mean, we paid for EHC a couple years before they had it, I think. Okay. Or
did it get canceled or something because of COVID, or like they held up like
just got COVID? Moved because of World Shoot got moved.
I got you.
But then we really started like planning it and like getting permits and like giving all the info about January before the match, so 9 months ahead.
It's also the how difficult the permitting process is dependent mostly on the size of the match that you're attending.
Okay.
So EHC, for example, as well as World Shoot, they more or less push you all of the forms and information that you need to be able to go. Like it shows up in your inbox as long as you've already registered, and all you have to do is fill it out. Yep. So the difficulty of getting places is dependent largely on if you're shooting a match of that caliber. Like going to the Rro Extreme, that like the Czech match you're speaking of, that one you'll have to figure out a little bit of on your own and like contact your own consulate, secure your own permits, all that type of thing. If you're going to a large match, it's not nearly as big of a deal. Like a lot of that gets handled for you.
Awesome. My next question was, do you have to know the laws or figure out the laws, or do they help you with the match? Is it on part of the sign up or anything like that? So that's awesome. Like I said, that's why we don't ask questions. You just segue right into everything. One of the questions we did have was this, and actually Mason got this one, was the sign up procedure for online. I can tell you right now that from my 1 or 2 experiences, it's been pretty much trash. Practice Score, folks, if you do not understand how amazing Practice Score is, try signing up for an IPSC match because it is shit.
Yeah, you got to appreciate Practice Score. Yes. Basically, for most of the matches, it's not hosted on a centralized website. If you want to go to a match, you need to go to the IPSC website and then go to their sublinks to find the website that belongs to the match itself.
And be prepared to do a wire transfer.
Yes.
For entries.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. They're not going to take a credit card. Most of these matches won't.
Do they don't take checks like some of the matches that still do in USPSA?
No.
The fact that we still have people requiring personal checks is, dude, I don't even have checks for my.
I was about to say, how many on this call actually have checks?
I think I have to go get one of the bank checks, like, where you write the account number on and mail that. I'm like, I don't even buy checks for my shit anymore. It's not, the only time I had checks was for my construction business because I had to pay subs and that was my receipt. I was like, what the hell? Who else has checks anymore? So yeah, there are still matches, guys. If you don't know, there are still matches that ask for literally checks. Like you guys go to Best Western, Walmart, get one of those type of checks or whatever. So so the sign up procedure is exactly what Mason and Matt just said. You basically have to find, I think the Rro Extreme matches, or not Rro Extreme, but the Extreme matches that come to the United States, you have to kind of just know the name of the match, look it up, and they have their own website. Also, if you're looking for scores, good luck, because Practice Score they work on Practice Score, but you have to grab it off the website? I don't know. You have to transfer all kinds of
shit. They have
shit.
a different scoring program. They do not use Practice Score, and it kind of uploads to like the match website.
Yes.
Using, I think, what is it? When
Easy Win Score?
No, it's not Easy Win. It's even different from that. They didn't like that. Yeah, I think it's like Win MSS or something.
I know you can now take it and put it into Competitor. They have a way to where you can do it and put it in there, but it's kind of a process. You kind of have to know what you're doing with computers, which unfortunately I don't. So I just find somebody who does and helps me, figure out how to transfer the stuff. But it's very difficult to track your scores like that. They definitely don't. Oh, I guess that's the next question. Do they keep you guys with live scoring in IPSC at all when you were overseas?
My experience with the practice score and live scoring is generally if there's a bunch of Americans, shooting the match, practice score will make it their business to keep the scores live. And that's the only way you're going to get anything close to live scoring. Because for the most part, the answer is no.
Yeah.
And that's a pull from that Win MSS program.
Yep, exactly.
That I think Eugene does or something, the guy behind Practice Score for at least Android. Like he does something that it pulls the info from WinMS and sends it to Practice Score to upload.
Yeah, that's exactly how I got it when I was here in the States when we did the Euro Extreme in Euro, whatever it was that we did at Frostproof. That's the only way I was able to pull the scores every day was through that. Pan American. That's the only way I could do it is because I had, and then that was a major process that it was download this and then move it to this and transfer it. I was like, oh my God. Okay, cool. I don't need to know my scores that bad because I was pretty bad at it. But, so the shooting culture, let's talk about the shooting culture since we're getting ready to get away from going overseas because we're going to start talking about more of the rules and stuff like that. So how do you guys feel like the shooting culture is overseas compared to here? Go ahead, Mason.
I think it's a more, they take it. I mean, I guess the easy way is they take it more serious. Like the people that are out there, I would say on average, want to excel at it, want to do better at it, do work ahead of time, and put the effort in. Unlike, you'll see people that'll attend nationals that don't go out and routinely practice or dry fire and stuff like that, and it's just another match. That's at least my take on it. Just overall in general, they have coaches. The other countries will provide coaches and stipends and group practice sessions for World Shoot. Some countries brought personal trainers, massage therapists, sports psychologists to the World Shoot in Thailand. They brought all of that.
I would give two examples to sort of paint the picture of what Matt is describing. Number one is, for the most part, the worst shooter you'll find in an IPSC match can make any shot in the match without delay. In terms of their ability, they're high B class, but just the slow version of a high B class person. They're someone who's extremely disciplined, has all the marksmanship ability in the world, but just not the get up and go to class up beyond that, if that makes sense.
Does that come from the style of the match?
I think it also has a lot to do with what Matt says is it's folks that are there tend to be much more serious about it because firearms ownership is not a right there. It's a privilege.
Right.
The other thing I think is, just a funny observation that sort of paints that picture is in spite of the fact that guns are way harder to come by and, are way less, the options are way less plentiful as far as what folks have access in other parts of the world. It's extremely uncommon to see someone show up with gear that's all jacked up and does not function, and to see people experiencing malfunctions at a match.
Yeah.
It's not really common at all.
Yeah.
You mean they actually treat it important that their shit works when they actually get a chance to go shoot?
There's people that'll show up with guns that for all intents and purposes look like a complete janky turd. It works 100% the whole way through.
Because it's a tool at that point, right? It's their tool. Yeah, it's their tool. Your gun should I have a great example. I took a picture of my Canic the other day and I was like, man, this thing is an absolute beater. Oh, that's right, because I use it all the time. Like it's holstered up. It's got marks all over it. It's never perfectly clean on the outside. I wipe off the oil so it stops getting on my hand, and that's about it. Like I clean the internals like I'm supposed to, but I don't care what it looks like. You know, I got chalk still all over the grip. It's not supposed to be pretty. It's supposed to work. And that's what I shoot for, right? I want the thing to work. But so earlier you said, and what I meant by earlier when you said something about them training or shooting slow, but being able to execute, do you think that's because of the style of IPSC that they shoot that style and they're not super aggressive? Because obviously there's guys like Eric Raffel that do not shoot anything like that. Now, obviously he's an amazing, you know, accomplished, very well sponsored shooter, but there's not, like you said, I feel like that is kind of the mindset that I see. Most IPSC shooters think of points and never think about aggression. I haven't seen a lot of aggressive shooters, maybe only guys at our level, right? That shoot at our level that are like that.
Yeah, I can't necessarily provide much color to that based on just what the matches are. I think, you know, the commitment, like I think at the relatively basic level, people have the ability to hit stuff. And as you kind of climb the skill ladder, you'll see people that get like incrementally quicker.
Gotcha.
But it's very uncommon to see someone that is undisciplined at shooting and or is just bad like on both spectrums, if that makes sense. Like it seems like the folks that have a lot of support or take it very seriously, like they'll get quicker, but for the most part, the discipline is a guarantee. So yeah, I think you can say that's probably, they understand what the sport requires of them quite a bit, and they tend to get good at that stuff.
So it's definitely shooting first, athleticism, movement second in that aspect, I guess is the good way to kind of put it. They think about, definitely think about the fundamentals of the firearm, the gun, the stuff that actually scores points first, right? The gun scores points, the movement saves points or keeps you from losing points, I guess is how you kind of say it in that game. Guys, that's kind of the experience, or I hear a lot of people talk about it that shoot a lot of IPSC that, you know, it's all points. And I'm like, yeah, but got to be fast too, like us, right? Like guys like us go over there and still shoot. Graffel's not slow. So if you slow down and get your hits against that guy, he's going to murder you in time with hits. So it's, you know, I kind of think of it, I hear that all the time. So it's interesting that you say like the B class shooters there, they're not going to make mistakes with the gun. It's maybe not, they're not as fast, but they're definitely fundamentally sound compared to a lot of shooters in America. I think you see that a lot in B class where those guys are just, they're all gas and no gun, no first. It's always gas pedal first in America. So you think that's also due to the stage designs, like the way we have so many high hit factor stages normally?
Yeah, probably. I think obviously part of it is that, you know, firearms access is much more democratized here. So people tend to learn, they see people go fast, they instantly think, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you know, it's not nearly as prohibitive of your money and time to be involved here. Yeah. So you have people that they don't really care how they do. They're there to, participation is the goal, as Ben famously said very long ago. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all, because obviously if we didn't have people that just want to participate, we really wouldn't have a game. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
agree.
You don't have people that really look at it that way at those matches, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
On average, it costs more to shoot IPSC overseas in other countries than what it does here.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very rich person sport there. And sometimes I hear people talk about it here and I feel like they want it to be the same until it becomes that way. Because a lot of people want it to be expensive. I'm like, dude, no, you don't.
Yeah, no.
No, you don't. Because what they're paying for just guns alone are usually double what we pay. Ammunition, you only have factory. There's no soft loads. They're shooting factory ammo most of the time from the people that I've met from overseas. They're not reloading ammo. There's no way to really save money there. You spend a shit ton of money on that sport there in that aspect.
Yep.
So, let's see, procedurals, all that stuff. So let's get into, since we've been talking about scores a little bit, I had a question that said no shoot penalties and down points. So educate me on that question, because both of you guys were like, oh, that's something we could definitely talk about. So maybe I'm a little lost.
It's a very minor thing that I think has only come up in my IPSC shooting career is no matter how many no shoots you have on a no shoot target, you only get a maximum of 2 hits.
Oh, okay. That's a lot
So that-
different than USPSA.
It definitely is, yeah. And it actually used to be the same until USPSA changed it probably 10 years ago at this point. I don't know. But this was really famous on a strong hand only stage at Frost Proof with like 25-yard targets with like half covered no shoots on them.
Shut the hell up.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. But the worst case you had, like you go out there, you shoot it, like you hammer like no shoots, you're like, well, fuck it, I already have the maximum. So you just like keep shooting so you get at least get your hits. And a lot of people that came over from USPSA were like, oh shit, I shot twice or had like 3 shots on it and like 2 no shoots. They're like, fuck it, I'm not shooting again.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to get any more no shoots on it.
Not realizing the rule was different.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I guess that is a good point. It was a long time ago when they changed it. Was that still around when you were started, Mason?
I don't remember when it changed or if I was around when it changed. I remember my first time I experienced that rule though. It was
had to be like 2012, 2013 when USPSA changed that then.
Yep. And the down points work the same. The raw point structure on target works the same way as it does in USPSA.
So it's still 10-point penalty for no shoots?
Yep. It's 10-point penalties, 5 for alphas, 3 and 1 for minor, 4 and 2 for major.
Only thing I think that might be and this is kind of like a meta of it, of a lot of the times if they have disappearing targets on stages, in IPSC, people don't even think about shooting them. Like it's not even a thought to shoot those.
Just leave them?
Just leave them always.
Really?
I think that's actually, and USPSA, it's like, yeah, you always have to shoot it. Like more recently, USPSA, like the culture is turned to where you don't ever want to shoot them. And basically in IPSC now, I don't think they have anything that's disappearing. Like you just don't see that setup anymore.
I skip a lot of disappearing targets, bro. Like I know what time is worth in USPSA. It's very valuable for most of those targets that they give you. Unless my gun is pointing pretty close to that target, I tend to skip them and it usually works out pretty well. It also depends on the stage, right? So if you give me 6 targets plus that, I'm probably going to be sitting in there still, right? But I've seen some positions where guys are losing 2 to 3 seconds because they wait on it or they wait for the double drop. And it's like, it could already been done like with the stage. Again, obviously it's stage dependent, but I'm catching a lot of the disappearing targets are a lot of times you can leave them and do very, very well without them. So I just think it's interesting that they're the opposite. They don't even think about them. Like that's interesting.
Yeah, they call them, like it's been talked as like their bonus targets. Like it's not just a target, it's like a bonus target if you do get it. So that's why they don't even think of it as like a normal target.
I mean, that's kind of it's a good point because at the end of the day, the one thing about a drop or a target that disappears is they're not even guaranteed the hits. So a lot of guys will spend all this time like stage planning it and focusing on getting hits. And they don't even know if they're going to get them. It's like you're not even guaranteed 2 alphas, and that's usually what you're chasing, or you should be. Anyway,
I think that's the big mystery for people is they don't understand the math, and beyond even that, they don't understand their ability. Like they don't have a really strong impression of whether or not they have the ability to get the points.
Right.
And so they therefore don't have a good ability to estimate whether or not it makes sense for them to go for it because they don't know how long it's going to take and they don't actually know if they can get the points.
Right.
And if you know either of those 2 things, you can make a really good decision.
It definitely helps. That is the only way that because I look at those things and I'm like, I'm going to be waiting for this damn thing forever, or, okay, cool, I got it. It'll be right there, just depending on how many targets they get. Again, you have to be amazed how many people don't know what their splits are, their transitions are. There's, it's like, I hear this conversation all the time. You don't own a timer. It feels like they don't own timers. So, okay, points down.
So while we're still kind of talking about targets.
Yeah, go ahead.
Target availability. So
good question.
Say you have a partialed up target, like a no shoot on top of a target.
Yes.
There is no minimum available target that the rule book says you have to have. Say you got to have a certain number, and it's like kind of spelled out dimension wise in the rule book. IPSC, there's no minimum, so they could have a target that has just the C zone above the A on the IPSC targets available, and that's a valid target.
Yep. The Pan American this year in Frostproof, they had a bobber that went up one time full. After that, you maybe got the size of a headshot at 25 yards on an IPSC target okay, over the top of a steel plate. You better hit it the first time it comes up. And I was like, that's an illegal target. And I learned that lesson real quick because I asked before I shot it. And they were like, no, they don't have that rule in IPSC. So that was a significant difference in the presentation of a target too, because I was like, wow, you could really jam people up with a sliver of an A.
Static. They can do it with static targets. It's not just moving. It's static also.
Do you see that a lot though, or is it a very rare thing?
No, you don't see it that much. You'll see posts about it or something, or like a local level that will do it. They didn't have anything close to that at EHC. And I've never actually seen anything that small at any of the IPSC matches I've shot. So, but it's possible.
Pan Am was an anomaly in being unreasonably difficult.
Yeah. That bobber didn't bob. It just went up once and fucking stopped. And I'm like, that's not even a bobber. Like, how do you even plan? Like and they were far. So it was like, you had to really be ready for it. I think there was like 2 or 3 steel and then that thing. And it was like, well, of course you're going to get all steel and then go for that. But it was just like, oh boy, how many people were shooting irons at that, whatever was left of that target. There was a lot of mics on that target. I will tell you, that was a pretty clean target for the whole match. I walked up to that target and it was like, shit, they're not even deltas. Nobody's hitting it at all. So it was pretty crazy. So why do you guys think that we don't see a lot of IPSC matches in the States?
Because it's not the predominant rule set. USPSA has their own set of rules, and that's what there's just not a lot of matches, so no one has the experience on it to actually run the matches, set them up under the IPSC rules, maintain the 3-2-1 format, make sure you're abiding by like the no shortcutting and stuff like that. Shortcutting is we could talk probably quite a bit on that. Like that's a culture thing in USPSA that people see that if you're able to shortcut or go around the wall in front of something, it's a preferred thing, not even if it's the best thing.
So is that what they call it in IPSC, is shortcutting?
Yeah, I think.
All right, so I'll explain what shortcutting is. So shortcutting is basically IPSC rules, and this is important for you guys to understand because it's massive penalties if you don't. You cannot cut outside of the fault lines in IPSC and gain distance. You can come out of the fault lines, but you have to basically go backwards or enter in the same exact position that you are in. Am I correct on that? So if you do a drop step, as long as you don't gain distance and you just come back within that step, then you're fine, right? So you're okay to go out of bounds. You just cannot gain distance or cut across, cut around walls, things like that. Now, I guess you could cut around a wall if you can stay in bounds, but I haven't seen anybody able to do that. So you have to stay in bounds. So shortcutting I didn't realize that was what it was called. And in USPSA, obviously it's freestyle. You can run out of bounds all you want, which I really don't run out of bounds very often anymore. It's very, very rare that I run out of bounds. I've noticed that it tends to be a waste of time because I can't shoot right away. So that's just me lately. But I do know, Mason, I've heard you talk about this quite a bit. So I'm glad we brought this up at this point because I definitely wanted to kind of actually, Matt, yours as well, because you build a lot of stages or design a lot of stages. I would really like to see them add that rule to our sport as stage designers where they will give us the option to keep people in. It would save me a shit ton of work in building stages.
Yes.
Like it doesn't have to be mandatory for the whole, like forever, for all the stage. Just allow me to do it once in a while. Like if I feel like I want to use that, let me have it, because there's quite a few stages where I'm like, man, I got to bring out 6 walls to keep this dude from running around this thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Mason's the first one that kind of said that we should have that option as like, we have the option for Virginia count or fixed time now. Or
why not?
Course. We should have the option to say that this is now a stay within the bounds instead of Comstock or something, like Comstock and that.
No, I think people are really scared, or at least I guess I can't even say people. I think NROI and the powers that be are scared of relinquishing the quote unquote freestyle nature of the sport by allowing people to restrict the motion more. In reality, you can abuse either movement style, be it restricted or unrestricted, to make a stage that's really like half of what it should be. You know what I mean? If you just by either oversight or by intention, you can make a stage that's a quarter of as cool as its potential by misusing, the motion. Of course, you could conceive of a situation where, you'd have a stage that's 16 rounds and you basically draw a trail that looks like it's the TSA line, right? And you have to basically run 150 yards to get through the stage.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're afraid of, basically.
Right.
But you can also have a stage where it's a Y-shaped stage, and basically it turns into an L-shaped stage in terms of how it functions, because every single person is obligated to take the shortcut to get from point
100%.
to point. And it ends up making the overall raw times much lower than a lot of the times the stage designer necessarily intends. So again, a lot of that hit factor nuance with like requiring people to shoot lower factor stages where accuracy actually matters gets thrown out with the bathwater, because you don't have that ability. Having the ability to make motion restricted or unrestricted within the zones would, number one, save clubs a lot of resources and time. Clubs that don't have all kinds of walls of resources, they could make stages where okay, there's no quote unquote options on the stage, but the one option you have is a perfect test of skills. It's exactly what the designer intended, and it would enable you to fix that hit factor. What's the term I'm looking for? Kerfuffle. That's definitely not the word I'm looking for, but
that is a good word.
Where we don't have a lot of ability to drive raw times up, because we don't have the ability to drive, the amount of overall motion up. So I think it'd be a really good option for a few different reasons. And I've voiced this to the highest of powers in our sport, and they didn't have much to say about it.
Where I'm
Same
seeing
thing with plates, really. Like, they took away plates at level 2 or 3 and higher. I think it's for sure 3 and higher. After attending a world shoot that used probably 50 plates,
how many
that were set up correctly and had no issues with them. With
weird
1,400 people running through it or something. And
so what do you? So when you say plates, I know what a plate is. So if anybody doesn't know what a plate is,
IPSC allows plates at all levels.
So do they? How are their plates? Do they fall off
away.
sticks type of plates, or are they on a permanent?
Plates.
So you don't think hitting the stick and it falling off is technically not hitting it?
It's not set up correctly.
How would you keep them from knocking them over if they hit the stick, though? I mean,
put a protector in front of it.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, that's totally okay. Then 101,000,000%. But nobody does that.
Well, that's a setup problem, not
right.
It's a culture and perception of difficulty problem. It's really not a functional fairness problem, and that's how it's presented to USPSA shooters, is that it's a functional fairness issue, and it is just not that.
Yeah, because I think plates are way better. Plates would be a lot better. They definitely fall over when you hit them with minor ammo. Like they don't. Yes, they don't have. I mean, even if they spin. It's pretty easy to make that call, right? Like, it's turned sideways, it's done.
They have bases that don't allow them to spin.
Even better. They
don't allow you to shoot the sticks.
And you could standardize those easily in our sport and only allow that design. Doesn't even have to be by a specific manufacturer, but yeah, okay. Just talking about
you could just require anti-rotation type bases and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a way to do it. There's a way to do it.
One thing that I'm noticing this year, when it comes to driving the times up or down or up, is everybody's using start sticks this year. This is how we're keeping everybody in bounds. And I'll tell you what I mean. So I hate them. I absolutely hate them. I only use a start stick or a start position if it actually adds benefits to the stage. And I'll give you a good example. So South Carolina sectional, I am so anti-start stick that every meeting we had, I was like, dude, we have almost every effing stage with a damn start stick. This is trash. But every one of our start sticks actually offered 3 to 4 stage plan options that it wouldn't have been if we didn't have the start stick. And the way we set this,
started in one
it would have been terrible. It would have been like, oh, cool. Everybody start in the back left. Everybody start in the back left. Everybody start in the back left. So by us using the start sticks, we actually were able to keep the hit factors down where we didn't have a bunch of 14 and 15 hit factors because the stages became more technical. But I had a stage where if you started in the middle, you probably had 6 or 7 stage plans on that. But I'm noticing unfortunately, there's a lot of stages at matches this year that are doing start sticks that I'm like, oh, cool. Run 4 yards, shoot some stuff. one plan. Run right 4 yards, run left 4 yards. Wow. So it's like the start stick should only be used if it actually benefits the stage. But that's the only way I've noticed that they're keeping us in bounds now. Other than that, well, I guess there's a lot of stages you can't run out of bounds anyway. It just depends on how they design it. But the stages that actually have quite a bit of options, when you jam a start stick on it, you're done. Most people don't look at the position of that start stick to make different options. And I've noticed that's just been a huge trend this year. Every nationals this year has been start stick hell.
Yeah, if you're trying to add raw time to the stage to drop the factor intentionally, that's obviously not a very effective way to do it, because you turn the draw time from 1.2 to like 3.5. Okay, what impact does that really have on a 15 to 20 second stage? Versus if we have a stage where if you look at it topographically, the stage is shaped like a capital M, right? Okay, we do unrestricted motion. This is going to be a 20 to 25 second stage. We do restricted motion, it could be up to 40.
Because now you got to work every point, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of running.
Yeah.
It's a tool that would be very beneficial.
Yeah, it's interesting how, so the only way to actually have that happen is to sit down with the powers to be. And do they vote? Does the board vote on that, or is the NRI rule and then they bring it to the board, or how does that actually change?
So
go ahead, Matt.
So when I was on, NROI proposed something, and they have something in the back end where you actually just vote on it. They kind of like assign you as an area director as the type in the system on the website. And you actually have access to not only that one, you have access to all the previous ones and how people voted. So you like put your vote in there, and sometimes they'll vote on there and then like take it to the meeting and also like do a roll call vote or something if someone requests that, or further discussion. But it's basically proposed by DNROI or NROI, and then it's put to vote by the members or members of the board.
But if you can't get that guy to propose that, then it goes nowhere.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
Which is frankly the problem.
Yeah.
That's not good. So just somebody asked, why did we split in the first place? Do you know why we separated from IPSC in general? Anybody have the history on that?
Before me.
Me too. That's why I don't have the answer.
Know exactly.
Right.
I think it had, like when Mike Voigt was the president, it happened back then. I'm not sure the exact reason. I'm sure it's in some USPSA magazine, or a new historical committee will probably get right on that.
Well, I will say one thing, guys. And since I've been shooting this sport in the last 5 years, and my experience, I've met a lot of international shooters, not just at IPSC matches, but all over the world. They've come in here and shot matches that I happen to be at. And I will tell you, if you think there's drama in USPSA or politics in USPSA, IPSC's the same shit. That could be part of the reason they separated, just in case you wanted to know. I don't know the exact detail, but I do know after talking to quite a few pretty high up in that industry of IPSC, there's a lot of bullshit over there, just as like there is here. So, and I mean, some of the stuff that we think is bullshit here is nothing compared to what those guys go through. I talked to them just to figure out what they're doing for divisions to get a senior division, and like some of their stuff is just to get rifles because of the laws that they deal with in so many different countries. Just to get PCC is crazy. Like they have all kinds of different issues that they have to deal with. They have committees for each division and all this different stuff. So there's a lot of drama because you're putting a bunch of grown adult men that all want to be right together in a room to make decisions. So, that's kind of how it works.
So just real quick on that, like they don't have a board. They have an executive council that the elected president puts together. But
that would never bring in favorites.
USPSA has like 9 votes that's on the board. IPSC has like every country is a vote. So they essentially have like 80 or 90 board members that vote on all this stuff. So imagine trying to get like 80 or 90, like a majority of 80 or 90 different countries to agree on.
We can't get 8 or 9. We can't get 8 or 9 people to do it.
It's just a multiple of that. Yeah.
We can't get 9 people to agree.
And that's probably why IPSC rules have been more stable over the years, honestly, because there's more people.
It sounds like a bad thing, but
Yeah.
I think there's like a Ron Swanson quote to be had here, right? Like, I think dysfunction, if it causes stability, is probably not the worst thing.
That's hilarious. So yeah, I mean, that is one thing. Do you guys feel like at this point they've done a lot better in USPSA with kind of settling down on the rule changes? Because I know
Well,
for
they have
the
so
year,
much
that shit was
other
hot and
stuff they're
heavy.
dealing with.
Yeah, well, that's true.
They don't have time to fuck with the rules because they're
Yeah.
dealing with all the other stuff right now.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sure
know,
if they
I
had time
remember
to fuck with the rules, they would.
I think it was a year or two ago. It just seemed like every week there was a new rule being changed or modified, or a division was being touched. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So I do remember that. And then I just kind of, luckily none of that really affected me, because I didn't jump on the flashlight wagon or any of that stuff. One guy, I'll never forget when the guy came out, the lock grip came out with their keychain flashlight on the bottom of that thing. And the first guy I ever met, I swear to God, it looked like he had a ping pong paddle on his hip, because that fucking thing was so big. And I was like, bro, you have a ping pong paddle for a holster. What in the shit are you wearing? It was crazy. It was always interesting. I'm like, man, we'll do anything to get an advantage. I guess that's a shooter, except for practice. God forbid. So, all right. So
realize that they're going to get relentless crap for any divisional changes they make, because everyone has an opinion on it, even if they're not going to be involved with it. So but they started getting enough crap for other stuff, they stopped doing that.
Yeah. I'm like, a lot of people keep asking me, like, do you feel like limited optics and carry optics should be joined together after shooting a true single action with a mag well and all the good stuff that's on there? I don't want them to be together. I actually feel like I started to suck because of that mag well. Like, I went to go reload for the first time and I threw my magazine over the berm almost. So I was like, oh, I need to go back to the fundamentals, because I don't have this bucket on the bottom of this damn thing to cheat anymore. So I feel I would like them to keep carry optics as close to what it is already, and just let limited optics be what it is, and let people just not shoot the divisions if they're not going to survive. Right. I don't know. I know you guys think a little different. Like, some of those divisions, you kind of want to get rid of some of them, I think, but I don't know. I'm big on just let everybody shoot whatever the fuck they want. And if they don't shoot it, then it dies on its own. I mean, look at limited. If they got rid of limited 10, I don't think anybody would give a shit. Right?
Not to date the podcast, but as of recording, limited optics is not a division, in spite of what everyone.
Very true. Very, very true. And actually, I know that for sure, because after nationals, I didn't get a match bump. So I'm still a sandbagging master. Yeah. As a provisional division, Max Leogranis is still a sandbagging master. I'm still a sandbagging master.
It should be, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. I knew it was a provisional, obviously, but I didn't realize that you can't actually use the matches as classifiers because it's provisional. So you always learn something new in this sport, from obviously experience, but it was just like, that doesn't make sense, but I guess it does. I mean, but why do classifiers count? Isn't that match a classifier at that point? It's kind of interesting, because, again, somebody brought it up to me, and because there's still a bunch of people that are unclassified after that match that were shooting it, All right, so let's get into a couple of the rules. I know I don't want to get too long on this guy. I know you guys probably got to go. So a couple of questions, and then I know you guys, Matt, you had some things you wanted to bring up. So I just want to make sure we get to all of that stuff. Let's start off with the stage planning. The first thing, let's do the stage planning. So Mason, do you remember, did you have a different question, or were they pretty much the same, the question I had? I can't remember.
I don't remember, man. Just tee it up and then we'll talk.
Oh, I know what it is. Okay, I did write it down. Okay, so it was the walkthrough difference between USPSA and IPSC. So either one of you guys go.
It's definitely different. So USPSA does allows people to like pre-look at the stages, like go on the stages, as long as you don't activate moving targets or props or stuff like that. IPSC does not. So this is like before you're like at that stage ready to shoot. IPSC does not let you pre-walk or go on the stages, or even most of the time deep into the bay. Usually have to stay out like on the rear of the bay, kind of like where the end of the side berms end, and you're not allowed to even go on the bays. Definitely not allowed to go in the shooting areas or anything like that.
So do they usually put a
difference?
So the matches I've been to, they had usually put caution tape up before the match, so that you had to stay behind that caution tape. Is that standard, or they just usually keep you out of the base in general?
No, that's pretty standard.
Okay.
They had like kind of like a mock fence and like a little 3-foot opening everybody had to walk through to get on the actual bay for the stages for each seat. That's pretty common for every IPSC match I've shot.
So I know in my experience, again, some of the matches here I don't think are perfectly rules followed, but you could walk to that line and go left and right all the way on the stage and look left and right. You just couldn't cross that line. So you could see quite a bit of the angles, but obviously the bigger stages, you couldn't see everything. So is that pretty standard on what, obviously Europe's the same exact way?
Yeah.
The way they do it there?
Yeah, they generally will put up some kind of a physical barrier at the mouth of the bay to make it so you really can't get any sort of don't get any real sense of what the array actually looks like. You just know what gets shot from where.
Right. Do you see a huge difference in your stage planning from the walking it from that distance? Do you make major changes normally?
Yes. In my opinion, that's the biggest difference in the experience for the competitor is the way that this works. So the big caveat is the stages tend to be much simpler, like we've talked about a lot, because the stages are smaller and, because of the fact that you don't get as much time to walk them, you're pretty much never going to see a quote unquote memory type stage in an IPSC match. The stages don't tend to be complicated. There doesn't tend to be a lot of really significant options to be had beyond minor inconsequential target order preferences. There's no real strategic decisions to be made for the most part, not significant ones anyway. But because of the fact you don't get to get on the stage prior, I mean, you can watch other people shoot, so you can figure out, like, you can see the splashes in the dirt, you can figure out what targets are getting shot from what positions. You functionally understand in verbalized terms what the plans are, but you can't see what the array looks like in first person. So you have to be very effective at creating a visualization that works well, and lends itself well to being able to execute the plan with very few actual physical repetitions, which is very, very different than the way the USPSA works. A lot of the time in USPSA, folks will get on the stage and they'll spend 20 or 30 minutes walking a stage and sort of choreographing their way through using all these dance moves and like footwork techniques, quote unquote footwork techniques,
right.
to make sure that they carry themselves through the stage. And like, they're just basically, their eyes are up, out on targets, and they're shooting on the move the entire way. And as long as it works out well, right, they get carried through the stage and everything is perfect the entire way. In IPSC, that just simply does not happen. You have to have techniques at your disposal that you can basically create a program on the fly. Generally, it requires you to look at the spots on the ground where you need to run to, and then you need to be very effective at visualizing the sensation of what your eyes need to do to make the transitions happen with, like, at the most 5 reps. So that's very different, and that's something that I think a lot of people's USPSA skills don't lend themselves very well to, and that's usually the biggest shock for people in terms of how it affects their scores. They find themselves hemorrhaging points or missing positions or forgetting targets or, like taking missteps and stuff like that, because it's a way, way different experience than what people get shooting USPSA matches.
So do you feel like when you go to the IPSC matches, do you have, because it's obviously, so usually 4 to 5 minutes at the most is what they give you for your stage plans, for your stage walkthroughs. Do you find, like they do in USPSA, where they tend to stack up in the same damn spot and just stand there? Or do you hold them more accountable and say, get the hell out of the way kind of thing?
Well, I think people at that level are realizing they only have 4 minutes on the stage. They have a limited amount of time. They haven't been able to go walk it the day before and look at everything. So kind of like, I see people kind of move through and like try to get as many reps as possible.
I got you. Right.
Yeah.
Jason, for you, how about you? Feel the same?
The politest thing I can say is it depends on the region.
Yeah.
that the competitors are from.
Right.
So you get a little bit of that for sure, is all I'll say. Yeah. But for the most part, Matt's right. Folks they're more experienced competitors, generally speaking, and so they're going to want to see the entire stage in its entirety as best they can. Sometimes you get clumps, but that's not really as much of a problem. It's more so the entire stage, you only get up to 3 minutes or whatever have you to look at it, so everyone is equally frantic and trying to see the entire thing as many times as they can.
Or it's like a wobbly bridge, like 2-position wobbly bridge, and like you get 3 minutes and 3 people have been able to get up. But
Yeah, it sucks.
From my experience, like most of those stages, like the ROs are pretty cool about it. They're like, okay, like everybody will get one walkthrough on this. Like, get up there and get the hell off.
Yeah. How does it
keep it moving?
How does it work with your walkthrough after the guy? So when the guy's shooting, are you able to get up on that stage as he's shooting, or after they shoot, can you walk the stage then, like we do in USPSA, like the shooter on deck, as soon as the guy says unload, show, clear, you can jump on that stage and start walking it?
Yeah.
So you get a little extra time doing that? Okay.
Yeah, you kind of get like a self walkthrough.
Right.
Sometimes they will hurry you back. Like if they're done scoring and like you're still walking, they will like kind of get on you a little bit, like shooter to the start position, stuff like that.
Right.
But you can kind of see that coming. Like they'll do it with the whole squad. They're not going to like single you out unless you're taking a bunch of extra time.
Right.
Yep. If you're lurking in the shooting area when you're in the hole or farther away from shooting, they will get on your case.
Yeah.
You know, generally speaking, the ROs have an idea of what culture is appropriate, and they have an idea of what the customs are going to be on their stage, and they enforce it rigidly, which in that way I actually appreciate quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we know the cultures as well in America. We see them coming in all the time, and not pasting shit. And the guy who stands at the last target of every stage, pretending that he pasted all of it and just waited for the RO to score the last target to paste. Yeah, I actually just had I just posted about a group down in Miami that never pace. I don't know how they ever get a stage done, honestly.
One thing on the walkthroughs, like there's nothing allowed to be in your hands. Like you can't have a towel.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Let's
or anything like that.
Yeah. Let's talk about
this. You're
this.
Actually doing the walkthrough.
All right. Good. Perfect. Because I want to talk about. So this goes into the next question I had about the make ready process. So the make ready process in USPSA and in IPSC are significantly different.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually give penalties for you breaking these rules. So go, Matt, give it to me. And then Mason, I'm super interested in how it affects you as a shooter, which you don't really have a long make ready anyway. I've seen you shoot a lot. So go ahead, Matt.
So nothing in your hands during the walkthrough. Like you can't have a towel. They consider those sighting aids. A lot stricter. I think it's pretty close to the same wording between USPSA and IPSC, but they just interpret it different. So basically like no hand, no pro grip bottle, no nothing in your hands during the walkthrough.
You can't even dry fire. You can't even use your air gunning, right? You can't even air gun?
Yeah, you can air gun with your hands.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Fine. Okay. Yeah. There's no problem with that, but just nothing that aren't your hands.
I got you.
At make ready, the big difference is they don't allow sight pictures or dry firing from the start position. And they strictly enforce the like one step start position. Like you're lucky if you get any steps, honestly.
I will tell you,
I would plan for 0 steps.
Yeah, I experienced this in my first Pan American. Yeah. So I didn't take sight pictures. I knew that rule. But I am a super safety freak about my gun. So even though my gun's been holstered this whole time and all these things, I always rack my gun when I pick it out of the holster. I'm crazy about it. Like I'm a coach too. So as an instructor, you have your gun loaded and unloaded a lot. So I always am racking my gun like a million times. And I was shooting open at this match, and we'll get into why I shot open because I don't know the rules of the gun. So it was the only gun I had that was safe that was going to pass. So I shot open at this match, and the very first stage, I rack my gun, I point my gun at the ground, and I check my dot, and I pull the trigger. That was considered dry fire, even though I wasn't actually dry firing. But I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you can't practice pulling the trigger. I go, I was just dropping the I wouldn't even practice. I was just dropping the hammer, never even thought twice. And I was like, holy shit, I guess that technically is dry fire, pointing it at the ground.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay. And so the next time I did that, I went to go rack and I was like, okay, dot, cool, holster. Because I was like, I think I got my warning already.
Yeah, you did.
I actually did that once. There was an unloaded start stage. It was really early in my IPSC career, and it was the same deal. It was like you instinctively kind of like pull out and like, you do the unload show clear before you start.
Right.
Like just be a team player,
That's a definite no. Definite no.
And the guy's like, you can't dry fire. And I reached through and I pulled the trigger with my left finger just to like get more. Like, I promise I'm not practicing my trigger. He's like, that's a warning.
Flip it upside down and pull it with your pinky. See, I'm not even looking.
Pull it with my tongue or something. Like,
oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah, and there's no way to drop the gun, or there's no way to take that and put it back into zero without pulling the trigger. So it's like, shit, dude. Yeah, you can't take the gun apart, but then you're like, it's not gonna work, dude. I got to pull the trigger still. So that's kind of funny. And so they're pretty particular about that. I think the match that I shot at Pan American in Frostproof, I saw a couple people have it, and do they give you a piece of paper, or is it on your pad when you?
It's on the pad. It's on the pad now, I think.
Yeah, it was not on.
It used to be on the paper.
I didn't receive the actual warning then on the pad because I was like, I'm pretty sure, because I remember meeting somebody that said they went through the whole match and never got a warning. And on their last stage, they took an actual sight picture and like, cool, I still got my warning. And they used it to look at the target, pull the trigger and everything. And I was like, I got to remember that. If I got a stage where I really need to see this target, I might have to use my warning on that. So they give you procedurals once you break that rule more than once, normally.
Yeah. It'd have to be grossly.
So it is, but it's actually a procedural, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a penalty in their scores. They give you.
I honestly don't know if I've ever seen that actually happen to someone.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't shot like an absolute pile of IPSC. I've shot like maybe a dozen IPSC matches, but I don't know if I've ever actually seen someone get a procedural for that.
Well, they probably know not to break that rule though as well. I mean, that's probably that's a major rule in their score, in their mindset. For us, it's just, whip that thing out and take 47 sight pictures on targets all over the place. So
yeah.
Do they have a time limit on their make ready?
So Matt, do you know if they actually have one written into the rule book?
I don't think they do. I've not seen an actual time limit.
Here's the thing, they do.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's written into the rules, if you take more than about 30 seconds, you are going to get messed with. Yes. So I would strongly recommend you DGM your make ready as much as possible if you're going to IPSC matches and want to do well. I literally went from doing a load the gun, 4 or 5 press checks, run through my entire stage plan for like the better part of a minute. And I cut that down to less than 15 seconds, from all my experience shooting IPSC. And I found that it honestly, it has no effect on my ability to perform the stage well, as long as my visualization prior is up to snuff.
Do you keep that process now for? Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
I would strongly recommend anyone that's going to shoot IPSC on a serious level does the same thing. And after making this change in my own shooting, it honestly has come to bug me more than it ever did before, watching people spend 3 minutes getting ready, because it's completely unnecessary. It slows down the match. And I think it's if you go try to do that on IPSC match, they're going to start asking, are you ready? And they're like, I think people get a timer, like when they're like hands, like they still have the gun in their hands, they'll hit the timer and then just like mean mug them like out of the side of their face. They do not mess around with that. So I would strongly recommend you cut that out if you're a person that's doing that.
That's something that I teach in my class, because to me, going through the whole stage process and all of those things, the last thing on my mind when I would do that was the last target. Well, I'm getting ready to draw on a fucking target. I don't need to be thinking about the last target. I should have had all that before I got up to the line. That's just the way I always thought about it. And I used to have a pretty good long make ready. And I was like, man, I'm wasting all this time thinking about all this shit. I should have had this way before I got here. So I really cut mine down. But I find, have you changed that now in your overall shooting? So you even do that now in IPSC as well?
100%.
In USPSA as well? Sorry. Yeah. USPSA. Yeah.
I think that's probably if people ask me like, how do you train for IPSC? That's probably, besides just being proficient at locking down points at speed, like being more visually particular. That's the number one thing I would say people should do is practice. You set up an array of targets or whatever, you visualize it like 3 times, and then you make it happen with like a 10-second make ready. And it's an opportunity that you can practice at club matches as well, of course.
100%.
You don't need to stand there and have this big pageant show of, oh yeah, the gun's loaded, mag's loaded, chambers loaded.
Right. Yeah, right.
Like, walked through my whole stage like 3 times. Like,
right.
I don't need any of that.
Yeah. So do you have anything specific since you've cut that stuff down, do you have anything specific that you work on for your stage planning process? The same mindset, like when you're walking stages in only those 3 or 4 minutes, like how do you maximize your time doing? Do you try to get there a day before and kind of get the outside visual? And then when you get up to that stage, then you're like, all right, cool, I kind of have a basic idea. Now I can work off that. Or do you go up there with 0 in your mind and go, I'll see it when I see it, or how do you do that usually?
It's definitely a good idea to show up and look at stages prior. So speaking for IPSC specifically, it's like you definitely want to get there and watch people shoot the stage if you can, unless you can just tell from walking by the back of the bay that it's extraordinarily simple. But ideally, right, you're going to understand what the plan is and what the options are before the 5 minutes start. And the first rep is dedicated to figuring out what the plan is and committing to one.
Gotcha.
I would say the same thing for USPSA, particularly the stages tend to be more complicated. The entirety of the 5 minutes is spent like visualizing and rehearsing to make sure the plan is set, so that there's no decision making to be had by the time someone says make ready to you.
100%.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
The hard part there is the fact that you can't use muscle memory to guide your way through the stage with your movement.
Because you didn't have any, right? You didn't have any.
There's no time to build it in. So you have to have a program that's strung together with vision. Like, okay, I have an array of paper, steel, paper. I'm going to look at the spot in the A zone, spot in the middle of the steel, spot in the top right corner of this partial. So the shots go right there. Reactive shooting, right? I snap my eye to the spot in the corner of the zone over there where I want to run to, and I get to running, right? Like it's strung together with things that I'm going to look at that remind me what to do. So I don't have to use the front of my brain to remember what the plan is. Because there's not going to be any room for, oh yeah, left, right, left with my feet. Like you're not going to have to figure that stuff out. It's just not going to work.
Right. I noticed that's something that I recently I kind of went through the process of how do I walk stages, not just for IPSC, but just I'm always at the range for a long time, and I'm realizing like, why am I at the range? So I started to like kind of break down my mental process of how I walk stages. I probably have my stage plans within 5 minutes. Like we walk some very complex stages here in Texas, and I was like, well, shit, I pretty much stay with my first plan. Why was I walking I walk the stages to try to break my first plan, right? But I have time because I'm not shooting it in 4 minutes. I'm not walking the stage in 4 minutes, but I go and try to walk the stage a second time just to go, oh, this might actually be a little bit better, tenth faster or whatever it is. So, and it's not really a, even just target arrays, just walking to a position and going, all right, instead of taking this first, I'll take this first, then this, and this. So those little details are the only reason I really walked the stage twice at this point. And I was watching a lot of people walk the stages this weekend. And again, they were pretty complex stages with a lot of movement, like up range, coming up range from down range. So there was a lot of things you had to think of. And I was noticing that these guys would run the stage 27 times, but they would never walk away and visually or like mentally close their eyes and go, I need to do this, this, and this. So then they would run the stage 27 times and they were like, I got it. And then they would shoot it. And I'm like, that's nothing what you fucking planned. It's because they never actually had it in their brain. They just physically did it and they never mentally locked it in. So that's a good point that you brought that up, because I never really thought about like how I do it. I started to force myself to walk away from the stage during my 4 minutes so that if I lose something, I can go back in and go, okay, cool, I just need to touch that up a little bit. But I used to take my whole 4 minutes and run it 6-7 times. I'm like, why? I already know this shit. I need to go back over here and like make sure I got it. So if I need to fix something, I can do it during those 4 minutes still.
Right. No, I definitely know exactly what you mean. You'll see people that they're walking the stage, they're looking around like the same way you look around in a park. Like they're experiencing it like they're experiencing it for pleasure, not experiencing it like try to memorize what the blueprint is.
Right. They're like, oh, cool targets.
An incredible experience at World Shoot where, practicing, visualizing that much. It's a relatively slow paced match. It's been a long time since I shot a match that slow. I was like there visualizing the stages. And like in my mind with my eyes closed, like I would look to a target, like, okay, I'm going to snap my eye to the spot of the target. And like with my eyes closed, I've envisioned getting like soft focus or like hanging my eye on the edge of the target because there's like, I'm shooting through a port and be like, holy shit, are you going to do that when you actually shoot? Like the point is to be look small. And like, I hadn't, had been a minute since I'd experienced that level of detail, like, in first person visualization. But like that's the level of detail like you're aspiring to get to. You should be able to, like, as I think Vogel said one time a long time ago in a podcast, at a minimum you should be able to like close your eyes and like a shutter show, like a slide stop animation. You should be able to like in fast motion envision what all your visual points are that you're going to on a stage and be able to recall them like without any hesitation at all. And if you're just there like walking the stage, like observing it, like making corrections on the fly and not committing that to memory, you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I've changed in my shooting this year and my coaching is I push the vision so much more than I ever did. I never realized how important my vision was until I started getting shitty hits. And I was like, how can I shoot these targets when they're right in front of me and no problem? But my transitions on an IPSC target would be trash, or this would be trash. And I'm like, I'm accurate on this target. Why am I not at, because I'm shooting behind the gun the whole time. So I realized even movement, I started forcing myself to find a spot on the ground and stare at that damn thing. And I realized the vision leads the way, baby. I mean, it was a giant breakthrough. And now I'm shooting stages at the speed that you guys are shooting them at. And I'm going, I'm getting good hits still. Holy shit. Like, oh, that's right. Cause I'm actually looking,
yes,
working my way through stages with my vision and not just going brown, 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 even though I felt like I never did that, but I would notice a lot of extra Charlies on the edge of targets instead of in the middle. And I was like, well, I'm right on the edge of the A. Why am I getting a Charlie? Oh, cause I never actually got to the A.
Lots of people rely on sort of rhythm or vibe to get them through, like understanding like how quote unquote fast you're supposed to be shooting a stick. If you're doing that, you're gonna have a real tough time with 3 minutes to figure out a course.
Well, and IPSC too is less forgiving because the targets are much smaller. I think it's 35% less of a target, if I remember correctly, as the number. So, I mean, those upper Charlies that you're getting in the shoulder are mics. And also you shoot high on those targets, you shoot a lot of Charlies because the top of that where you would normally shoot a USPSA target is missing. So I actually changed the way I aim at USPSA targets so I could shoot an IPSC target the same. I never had to change my vision anymore. I used to shoot in the center of the USPSA target. And then I did a cutout with an IPSC target and I realized where I was aiming on a USPSA target was right where the V starts. So if I missed at all, I was in a Charlie. So now I aim a little bit lower on the USPSA target and it allows me to just keep the same vision on the IPSC target. It's kind of weird. I never thought that was a big deal until I kept shooting fucking Charlies. I was like, I'm aiming in the same spot. How come I'm getting? And it was just, I would just miss them barely. So I was like, I changed the way I looked at the target and it made a huge difference for my shooting. So, okay. I think I only have one thing to talk about and this one's kind of the deepest one. So
I got a couple questions on stages real quick.
All right, you do that, Matt.
Statements.
Go ahead, do it.
Be aware there's going to be increased inspection at every stage. They're going to look at where your holster is, how many magnets you have, where your mag pouches are, and they usually want to see that with the gun without a cover on it.
What do you mean by cover?
Like a gun cover, like a
so if you have a gun cover like your open gun or what, they want that off.
It's really
simple.
You. They'll ask you.
Okay,
but they will look at like all your stuff, or they're just going to like write down that everybody passed and everybody was checked. So they will also routinely check your gun serial numbers on overseas matches.
Really?
Make sure that you're using the gun you say you started with.
Okay.
Or if you switch guns, you're using that new gun at that point.
Gotcha. I know that, and that was something I was going to bring up because I'm perfect segue because I was going to get into equipment now. Because like I said, this one's going to be a little bit deeper because it's always, theirs is a little bit different than ours. When the IPSC matches I've been to, they do a pre-check. So you actually put your gear on, walk up, they check your gear, they check your belt, and they actually, how do I say this? Not identify, but they record what you have on. So on their pad or on your piece of paper, I'm assuming it's all going to be digital at some point, but they literally write down the location of what you have. They do the serial number. I don't remember. Do they weigh the gun? I think they weigh it at that time, don't they?
I think it depends on.
Or is that a chrono? I think that might be chrono. That might be chrono.
Division has weighted on the probably maybe classic probably.
And I think don't they for the optics they have a light and heavy. Not for IPSC Nationals. I don't think they have that.
They did do that for when they had PDO light and heavy.
Right. So I'm wondering if they'll do that. I don't know if they'll keep that at IPSC Nationals or if that was a world shoot type of thing.
There's only one PDO now.
Okay, so it's just the same. Everything's the same. Okay. Yeah. So that was one of the questions I had was weight too, because I mean, obviously I'm shooting a Canic, you're shooting a Shadow 2, correct?
Yeah.
And obviously Mason's shooting a SIG. So those are obviously three different guns and probably pretty similar weight, but Matt, you're probably going to have a heavier gun.
Yeah. I mean, I shoot a normal Shadow 2.
Right. So what, do they have weight limits?
Ounces?
Do they have weight limits like USPSA or do they not have weight limits?
No.
Okay.
No.
So is that something you guys like or dislike for us in USPSA? Do you think it's important for weight or like to have that?
I mean, essentially, we don't have a weight limit. In
Yeah,
USPSA.
no shit. I was just gonna say we
because
used to.
it's so much. Like
Yeah,
essentially, there's not a weight limit. When we were weighing the guns and had to be within 2 or 4 ounces of factory weight, that was a different thing at that point. But essentially, now there's no weight limit. You shoot
I
what
think
you have.
that's been 3 years ago at least. So anybody who doesn't know, we used to have a weight limit that was pretty reasonable to keep it pretty close to stock. And now I think we're at 68 ounces or some crazy
59, I think.
Yeah, it's 59. Like it's
like
basically
5 ounces.
Yeah, you can put a boat anchor on your shit and run around. It's definitely and a lot of companies are doing well making brass everything.
Yeah,
they brass everything.
It's very similar though. It's very, I guess the rule is similar, but it's functionally very different. They don't have a weight limit in IPSC, but it's because they don't allow you to do anything to your gun except mess with the inside of the trigger. Like you can have quote unquote aftermarket trigger assemblies, which as far as I can tell means you can mess with anything connected to the trigger except like the hammer, and as long as it still passes the weight limits, which is a way easier thing to enforce and is honestly probably way more reasonable than what we have going on for a quote unquote production gun.
Right. It's not really production anymore at this point. They're pretty modified. The thumb rest tail and everything's just completely modified at this point. So do you have when it comes to, let's talk a little bit about the triggers, because I know there's a few things about like, and this is also for me guys, because I am definitely not on the equipment thing. That's one of the reasons why I chose open I was shooting open at the time, trying to try it out. And I know for a fact that magazines were an issue for me. I actually had to borrow magazines because MBX magazines at the time and they still do, make 2 different magazines for open. The limit in USPSA is 171. The limit for IPSC is 170. Why we don't just equalize the same thing, I don't get it. It just makes it a pain in the ass to order extra shit. But the mags that I had, even though they were technically 171, thanks to pre-check, they fit. And the ones that were IPSC legal that my buddy Tom Carlson from frickin' Mark 7 had, he let me borrow. He goes, here, dude, take these with you in case. They didn't fit, and they were actually the IPSC ones. I was like, holy shit. So the ones I had worked. The other option was I wouldn't be able to use 170s. I would have just want 155s. And most of the stages, that probably would have worked because there was, the small, medium, long course. It would have worked fine. But the trigger weight on a production gun, I'm assuming, is the same for the optics division for the for
production and PDO is the same.
Okay, so what is the poundage on that?
It's 5 pounds if you have a double action.
Okay,
double single.
So any of you Shadow 2 guys, any of you guys shooting anything double action is going to be 5 pounds with the hammer down. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it with the hammer back? Do they have that as well?
They do not weigh that.
So they don't weigh
not
that.
Weigh that.
What about a striker fire then?
So it's 3 pounds on every shot.
3 pounds for every shot. So I'm writing this down because I don't even have a trigger scale to even check that. So I will be borrowing something. So 3 pounds.
Yeah. And usually they don't use like a trigger pull gauge. They use a weight that hangs off the trigger.
Oh, okay. So if it doesn't go off,
like the weight is sitting on the table, you put your trigger through and it like hooks in there, and then it like lifts the weight up. And if the weight has like any amount of space between the weight and the table, it's a pass.
Interesting. I wish I had a video or a picture of that. That's cool. That's actually probably a little bit more accurate than the digital gauges, right?
100%.
Yeah. Another thing that's a minor distinction with that, but it actually affects some guns a lot, is it says specifically in the rules, it's wherever that weight rests to when you put the muzzle straight up. So like for some guns that have a straight trigger, like it's going to run to kind of the high side of the bow where it's much heavier. If it's the opposite, it's going to be the opposite. So you have to be aware of that. Like you have to kind of like, if you're using a regular like digital trigger pull scale, you kind of got to put it in the middle of the shoe and use your best judgment where that's going to go to.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I have two Canics. I have a pretty much stock. Well, the trigger is 1,000,000% stock, and then I bought a secondary. I'm holding it out of the camera. I have a secondary one that I bought used for IPSC, only for, well, I guess it was a backup gun, but for IPSC, and he did a spring in the trigger. So it's a little bit tighter. Like it has a little bit less play in it, and it literally goes to the wall and just goes click. So I'm like, it feels the same, but I don't know what it is weight wise. So I'm like, I don't think that would change the weight, but maybe it does. So that's why I'm asking about the weight. Cause I know that's a question a lot of people are going to ask.
Yeah. You should try to find something to measure before you get there.
Yeah. Well, yes, for sure. I mean, I could put the stock spring back in from the other gun or whatever, but
Bullseye used to have like a set of these weights that they required for theirs. If you have like a local Bullseye club, that might be a way to get kind of the exact way it's measured.
Where they set it up. Okay, cool. The other thing is, and this is the most important thing in my world, and I actually do know this rule. And actually, I think, Mason, you have talked about this before on on a podcast or some conversations about the grip tape for the gun. You can use grip tape. Okay, so a quick question. I've added a brass backstrap to my Canik. Not legal. So I have to put the plastic one back in, even if I put tape over it?
Yeah. I mean, you're running the risk of getting like, it's probably a bump to open.
Oh no, trust me, there's no risk. I'm taking it off. I just don't, that's why I'm asking.
I had to do that with my P10s. Like I had brass back straps on those and had to remove them.
So these are the little things, right? Like that someone gets screwed on because we just aren't that stringent on, well, hell, we're not stringent at all on gun rules at this point. So that's why I'm like, man, so I have put permanent tungsten or silicone carbide on my grip. So my grip is, sandpaper. So that's why I ended up buying more sandpaper grip to put on this gun. That's why I'm waited to do the podcast with you geniuses so I can make sure to take that off first. I have to put the grip tape on.
Silicone carbide is okay, I think, though, isn't it, Mason?
No, because it's permanent, right?
It has to, you have to, if you put it on a replaceable part of the grip, i.e. the side panels that complies with whatever E number appendix, then it's fine. Like you can do the grips on like a Shadow 2 or a gun like that.
Okay.
But you can't put it on like, the regular parts of the frame, like the back strap and stuff like that, the stuff that's not replaceable.
Yeah,
I know that's because on the SIGs, I get a little bit screwed, honestly, because there's no replaceable parts of the grip. The entire grip that you see, the entire frame is the thing. So I had to go to doing, experiment high and low to find a grip tape solution that works good and stays in place.
What are you using for your grip tape?
Can I answer a question with a question to Matt?
I'm sorry. Sure. Sorry.
What is the rules on using glue to stick down stuff onto your grip?
I think that's fine.
So that's
like super glue or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have an IPSC specific pistol?
Well, I don't really have to, because that's one of the beautiful things about the SIGs is I can just replace the grips and they're significantly cheaper than the gun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have the whole, with the SIGs, you can take the whole top out and all the metal parts you can strip. Basically the entire plastic frame is a cheap part. So I have ones that are set up for IPSC that are grip taped exactly like I want. My regular USPSA guns, I use silicon carbide, which is, visibly over camera. It's almost indistinguishable, but this is completely permanent, where this, unless you do some glue or some funky business like that, really is not. I really don't like grip tape. You follow the factory manufacturer's guidelines on how to install that. It's not an if, it's a when that stuff's going to start slipping around. So I ended up reinforcing it a little bit with some funny business.
Yeah, I think I think for me especially, and most people that I know tend to modify their grip just a little bit. I know quite a few people that are, which I don't know why, but I know quite a few people that are adding, especially to the steel frame Canics, they're adding palm swells, and because that back strap's replaceable, so they're starting to put those on those back straps, and which obviously would be illegal. The other question is so why is it that you can't use the brass? Is it because it's not a factory part?
So I'm looking up that to confirm right now.
Because even though it replaces my factory, it's not a modified. It's exactly the same shape and everything. So that's what the question was.
I think it'd be a gray area, just like when people used to put the quote unquote the Seattle slugs or whatever in the Glocks. I think it's going to be a gray area like that with the backstrap specifically, because
What's a Seattle slug?
You can use, it's like, in the Glock, it has that little hole, like basically it
Right.
has like a big hole right here.
Yeah.
Put like a plug in that to give you like this tiny little like sort of lip, basically a rear weight.
I gotcha.
You can use brass or other materials like on the replaceable grips. Like if you put grips on a Shadow 2 or
Right.
something like that, you can put swells and you can put brass on it. But it's the only thing they got really particular about was if you had like grips with holes in the actual grip. For whatever reason, they really did not care for that on some friendly guns at EHC, but they don't really care about the material. They don't really care about the contour. Depending on who you go to, there's another thing like we talked about a little bit with the Rro competitor culture. Yeah. It depends a lot on who you talk to, how those rules are interpreted, and unfortunately, those division rules are way more gray than they are in USPSA. I've seen people at Pan Americans, the Pan American Championship with the crazy movers you were talking about, one last fall. There was two guys both shooting CZ Shadow 2s. They showed up 10 minutes apart. One had lock, brass, palm swells. He got signed off, no problem. Another guy showed up with the exact same grips and got a 3-hour runaround. Luckily, he lived on the other side of the state, so he was able to go home and get different grips. But I mean,
holy shit.
Like there's a lot of subjectivity depending on what range masters you're speaking with about how those rules are meant to be applied. So the best advice I could give is show up with stuff that's obviously legal.
Yeah,
because they get particular about a lot of things.
So I wonder if it was a color thing, like if he had a brass colored grips versus black, and the guy just saw the black and said, "Cool, factory."
It definitely could be.
Yeah, interesting.
I just looked it up. It says like no aftermarket parts except for grips. It doesn't mention aftermarket back straps.
So that's part of the grip. I mean, it's the back strap of the grip.
No.
Oh,
that's
okay.
not nice. I would roll.
No.
Oh, well, listen, like I said, I'd rather just put it stock.
It says aftermarket grip panels.
Yeah, because I leave
the profile. That's why
I leave my gun.
Grips are kind of questioned.
Right. I leave my gun. My gun's pretty much factory. I like it the way it is. I don't really screw around with it too much, but it's just interesting that the of all the things that are important to me is my grip. And that's the one thing you can't make it the way you want. Just a little stickier, right? Like maybe I'll get that stickum like they use in the NFL. Then I'll be just glued to my hand. Good way to DQ, right? When you're trying to move your stuff. So you, Mason, what are you shooting at IPSC? Are you shooting IPSC this year?
Yeah, of course.
What are you shooting?
Production.
So 15 rounds in IPSC?
Right.
Yeah.
Does it change the way you shoot the stages because you have more rounds? Can you be a little more aggressive or?
Yeah, in some cases, definitely. So because you have 15 rounds, a lot of the time you'll have a few extra rounds to spare. The thing that you have to remember is it's an economy of scale. Like you have 16 rounds in the gun. If you shoot a 14 round stage, you still only have two more rounds, even though you have 45% more ammo. So you don't have, over the same amount of shooting, you have approximately the same amount of extra shots. And the other thing is, of course, you're always going to produce the best time by like hitting steel the first time.
Right.
No, I need extra shots. So there's rare instances where having a few more extra rounds enables you to take risks, but it's not common. It mainly changes the frequency with which you need to reload. Right. But most of the time, on a large stage, you're only going to need to reload twice. That's the biggest difference, really.
Yeah, versus 3 or 4, depending on what you're shooting, right? So I have two different things that I know for sure are different. So I want clarification from you guys because I know you shoot a lot more of this than I do. I guess the first question would be, do you think they will have standard stages, one-handed shooting at IPSC Nationals? Do they usually do that? Because I know you guys have shot
standards. They can't have fixed time or Virginia count or standards.
So
they can have single hand shooting only. That's mandated without like having to carry something.
So that technically is not a standard, right? Or is that
not a standard? No,
okay.
It's like a regular field course, and they can have that up to 24 rounds. So you could have a 24 round weekend only stage.
So when they make you shoot one-handed, whether it's strong hand or weak hand, you cannot You don't draw out of a holster and switch, right? You start with one hand only and that's it, and stay with that hand.
Only, strong hand only. I think they can make you draw from the holster, but weak hand only will always be a pickup stage.
So no gun switching. There's no hand switching. I mean,
no.
Okay.
No.
All right.
And one thing on the gun pickup, like if you have to pick up the gun with your weak hand, you cannot assist the pickup with your strong hand. You have to do it only with your weak hand.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. It's procedural if you don't. If you touch it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Procedural.
Okay. So if you have a jam, you can rack it with your other hand? Yes, no?
Yeah. Yeah, you can clear jams with both hands, but you just cannot pick the gun up with using the support of the other hand.
Okay.
Same with strong hand. If they make you pick it up, you can't use your weak hand.
All right. So usually the American version of IPSC Nationals, they do not do those types of stages, or I mean, I guess they can do it if they choose.
They have before, yeah. Shannon was
okay.
pretty common of putting them up.
I have no idea who's running this year's match. I'm assuming it's
Gorka and Manny.
Well, it's at their match, but are they actually running it?
I think they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Real quick on production optics. Race holsters are allowed, but like if you're just shooting this for IPSC Nationals to shoot it, don't change your holster. It doesn't make sense.
That would be dumb.
And then like if you're shooting a hammer fired gun, you cannot pre-cock the hammer. So like you can't draw out and thumb cock the hammer and shoot. That's a procedural. USPSA, that's okay. You don't actually see people do that though.
Yeah.
That's just a couple things.
Also, round count for production optics is 15 rounds, just like production?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Do they have a magazine limit, like on the length of the magazine? Is 140 still good, or is that too long?
It depends what division you're talking about.
Factory or aftermarket magazines.
So if I'm using the Henning base pads that I use in carry optics, is that legal in IPSC, or are those too long? Because they're 140 millimeter is what we are in USPSA, correct?
Yeah, it's a 140 in USPSA for CO.
Okay, so is it in IPSC, is that the same?
So they're going to get you on like negligible weight added for the base pad. There's no measurement like criteria right now. They've floated out there 15 grams.
Okay.
For a base pad weight. But that's not actually an interpretation or part of the rules right now. You
so
just
go back to my base. Go back to standard.
It'd be an argument. You just don't put yourself in.
It would be a bad idea to show up with 140s brass base pads or like anything larger than say a shock bottle base pad for an aftermarket pad.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So I mean, this is why we did this, right? Because I mean, these are all little stupid things that most people don't live close. I can tell you right now, I know guys that are coming all the way from Miami that are wanting this podcast. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going home to go get that stuff in Orlando. Probably be a good idea if vendors showed up to this match. They'd probably make a fortune. Because it's not the easiest thing to interpret some of the rules when you're already not really paying attention to USPSA rules. Most of us don't know the rules. They just go, what do you use? Okay, cool. I'll get the same shit. Seems to be the easiest way for people to follow the rules, right? But you got anything else, Matt?
Not on production or PDO.
All right. Well, yeah, my just the equipment, and obviously open is the only thing that I noticed that was different in open was the magazine length. That was the only thing I ever had to worry about the entire time. They didn't care about magnets.
Bullet weight.
Oh yes, bullet weight. You cannot have a 115 grain bullet, and it's got to be 125 or up. Correct?
I think it might say like 120 something.
It's 124, I think is what it is. 124 and up, I believe. Which is kind of weird because if you do a 124 and it weighs in at 123, I wonder if they stick that to you. Maybe they give you a leeway, but I know 115s were not legal because I know a lot of the guys shoot 115s in Florida here for open. And
120 grain and higher for major.
So okay, so they gave you some leeway for if a 124 weighs 123.
Yeah, that's
standard is way different
for open.
Say yeah, go, Mason. Talk about it standard because I know there's gonna be some people shooting that.
Basically, any person with a limited gun that's like a 2011, that's like a proper limited gun, it's not going to be legal. It has to fit essentially in the production box, which means you need like 17 round flush fit mags and a way smaller mag wheel than you're used to, and probably not like a 5-inch barrel is about all you're going to be able to get away with.
So standard is technically limited in USPSA, correct?
That's closest to that. Yeah.
Okay. So what is production in in IPSC and USPSA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just the round count's really the only difference on that scenario. Well, obviously they screw with their guns a lot more in our division, in our situation, but so open is open, PCC is PCC. So it's just
PCC
that we call
is limited to 30 rounds also.
30 rounds. Yep. 30 rounds. So production optics is considered carry optics. So that's all. That's another thing that a lot of people struggle with is the divisions. I know this year they voted on limited optics as a division, even as a
provisional.
Thank you. I almost called it. Yes, and they said no. That's one of the reasons why I ended up not shooting limited optics instead, because that's the gun I had in my hands for a while. So I was just like, I'll stay with it if I could. So they didn't pass that, so that didn't go through. So when is the World Shoot? We'll finish with that. How long until the World Shoot? So 2025. So just in case anybody cares, how many matches are left? Or is there enough opportunity now to make the World Shoot team at this point?
Yeah, there is.
Or is it over?
Yeah. So you have both IPSC Nationals this year and next year.
Okay.
This year is in November in Florida. Next year is in Arizona, Phoenix area in April-ish timeframe, I think.
That early? Really?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Then you still have like CO Nationals, then you'll have all the other nationals that are also qualifiers.
So how many nationals have they already used as a qualifier? Is there 2 in already?
All this year's.
So it's just, this is the first year that they started qualifying.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Well, I would definitely have you guys both back on for another podcast about the World Shoot experience, because I would love to explain to people how you make the World Shoot team, how much support USPSA gives you guys for I already knew that, but I would really love to get your guys' experience in that, because there is one thing that I wish I knew. I wish I knew more about it when I first started, because my ultimate goal at this point has switched from everything. I've always wanted to be on the World Shoot team. I want to earn a spot to represent my country, to make the World Shoot team. I spent 2 years being told we were going to have a PCC Nationals or PCC, team. I wasted 2 years trying to make a World Shoot team. That still hasn't happened. So that's one of the reasons I switched, because I was like, there's no way in hell this is going to eventually happen. I mean, again, over there, it's a little different on rifle. We're much more open to rifle here than they are. But I was, so now at this point, I'm trying to make it.
That's sometimes, well, it depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Like
so
SPRs
they say.
Are cool over there.
Yeah.
And they're not as cool here.
Right.
But like other stuff is kind of more restrictive.
Yeah. So again, I know there's definitely do PCC over there. It's just, I know last year we did IPSC and they didn't do PCC at IPSC Nationals last year. It was very odd. And then as they were doing the match, they said, oh, I guess we could have done it. And so, they didn't do it. So it's very odd. I'm not sure if IPSC Nationals is even going to count as a classifier to the World Shoot, if for PCC, because I know this year at IPSC, they're going to allow it. So again, not a division I shoot a whole lot.
The schedule says PCC World Shoot 2025 in Czech Republic. So
I wonder if so is 2025 for World Shoot. Where is that this time coming up?
Handgun is in South Africa.
South Africa. Is that a great place to go shoot? Is it better in Taiwan or where you guys just went?
Thailand. I don't know.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a bit hairy, but as everyone knows, the global situation in terms of what places are safe and what aren't are changing basically daily.
Yeah.
So
we can't rely on that info right now.
It's not even any point worrying about it until we're like a year out or so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely have you guys back on, because at this point, I would like to get it out as early as possible to explain to people, like, look, this year is pretty much over, but you've got another 2 years to really get a chance to get it. And you have to have a certain amount of nationals and a certain amount of IPSC nationals and place well enough to make those teams.
There's some nuances on it now. They kind of changed it from previous years, but it's nothing that can't be explained or figured out. So
yeah, it would be nice to see a switch in USPSA to maybe make that a priority in the funding. But I don't know. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It sucks because it's like every other country is kicking our ass in support for our shooters, for their shooters. I mean, they're literally paying for them to go to these matches. And I remember $500 is what you guys got. And it's dude, that doesn't even pay for a quarter of a ticket. That doesn't even pay for the hotel over there, or even a quarter of the foods. It's just, it sucks that you're spending all that money on your own when you're trying to represent our sport, our country, as a, it's a goal that should be the sports goal, not just an individual shooter, but that's how it goes. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Do you guys have anything else you want to add? Mason, you want to plug any classes you got coming up?
No, if you not, I don't think I have any openings at upcoming classes, but if you want to send me or set up a class next year in your area, email me at masonlane.lsat@gmail.com. and we can make that happen very easily. I'm pretty booked up in the middle of next year, but sort of late winter, early spring, I can make stuff happen, as well as towards the latter half of the year.
Are you, you're not able to do much locally at the beginning of the year because of the weather, right? It's pretty bad there.
It really depends what kind of winter we get. I mean, by the end of April, it's sometimes possible to shoot.
Yeah. All right, what are you doing for your training when it's snowed out? Do you have an indoor range kind of area where you can kind of work, or?
It depends on the year. Yeah, I have an indoor range that's local to me where you can shoot 15 yards or so. So you can do a little bit of fundamental stuff and then just a whole lot of dry fire. And I always make it a point to shoot winter matches to keep myself motivated to do stuff. Otherwise, it's just not possible to care unless I have a match coming up. If I end in November and then I don't shoot until May, it's just not possible to stay on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Everybody asks me like, man, you shoot a lot. I'm like, dude, trust me, it's pretty easy to get lazy as shit in this sport because I travel so much, I coach so much. I'm like, trust me, it's pretty easy to go, I'm tired. Very easy. And as much as I love shooting, it's a lot of work when you make a living doing it. The gun just doesn't look as sexy sitting on that table for a dry fire session when you just got done, shooting 1,000 rounds at a practice or 1,000 rounds at a class. You're just beat to death. So it's your personal shooting tends to go backwards a little bit. So, but yours is even worse because you guys live in a really cold climate. So I was like, I could imagine it's pretty easy to go, screw this, man. This shit's snowing.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, you look at the amount of people that are extremely talented shooters that come from cold areas, and you realize it's not the encumbrance. It's not an encumbrance you can't overcome. It just forces you to be more clever in other ways.
Yeah. Well, it's your work ethic, man. That's why you're good. I've been watching you since you were, since I guess you would say you sucked. I've been watching you for a long time. Yeah, well, I watched you when you were trying to make GM, and I listened to a couple podcasts where you were like, man, I really struggled because I kept trying. And then when you stopped trying, it all of a sudden just pow. And then you win a nationals out of nowhere. And it's just like all this stuff. It's just like, oh, now he's just one of the best shooters of all time. So it's in our sport. So it's just interesting. It's just, you keep pushing, and every time we talk and you don't get first, I'm like, hey, as another guy just like me who gets pissed off for not winning. It's like you finished 4th at nationals this year and you look like it was the worst match of your life. And I'm just like, I feel you, bro.
Well, this year's nationals, I think a lot of people felt that way, regardless of how they placed.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're not honest with yourself, the match was, how many people actually have ranges they can even shoot 30 fucking yards? I mean, I don't, I don't. So it's like, to me, it's like, what's the chances of me being really, really prepared for this match, right? In that aspect. So it's kind of how it is. Unfortunately, it's how it works. So, but either way, Matt, you got anything?
No, I'm good. Contact Mason for a class, and Tom.
Yeah, I don't, I think I have 2 classes coming up. I'm going to try to do one in California again, since they're the only ones that seem to have decent weather at this time coming up in this end of the year. I have a class in Ohio, but it's probably sold out already. I'm kind of letting the guy who owns the range set it all up. So I think that's already done, but I don't even think I have to post it publicly. But other than that, man, I'm done. I don't have much time left in the year. All between the matches and my physical body, I got to get back to working out because I'm pretty beat to shit. The middle of the year is really rough. Like Mason said, my summer, it was 3 months. I wasn't home for a single weekend. So between the matches and the coaching, the only time I actually take a break from coaching is I learned not this year, but last year, to take 2 weeks off before a match I actually give a shit about. Because if I go to a class and coach and then try to shoot right after, I'm worthless. I physically cannot run around. So I'm old. That's just how it works. But all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me. If you guys have any questions about anything on the podcast, feel free to hit me up. Actually, before I leave, just in case you guys don't know, Mason, give everybody your socials so everybody can hit you up and follow you. I highly recommend you follow him. He kind of knows what he's talking about, and he has a lot of good stuff that he puts out. Go, Mason.
It's Mason Lane Shooting with spaces on Instagram and Facebook.
And actually, his YouTube,
post videos to YouTube.
Yes, his YouTube page.
That's true. That is true. I do post a lot of stuff on YouTube. I don't know what my YouTube channel is called, but if you search Mason Lane, you'll find it.
Look at his YouTube page. He puts out a lot of videos. He's actually done quite a few breakdown videos that are very, very good and very detailed. He uses squiggly lines and stuff. It's pretty awesome. But
I post a lot of breakdowns on there. Whenever I shoot matches, I try to take time to break it down and sort of give my thoughts on what happened and what I wanted to do better. Using some software, so that those are valuable for a lot of people, and I do those for individuals. I'll do breakdowns for other folks too. It's my handle is at Mason Lane 2030 on YouTube, but if you just search Mason Lane, you'll find me. There's videos on there.
I highly recommend that you watch, even if you don't watch all of his videos, just go and watch one of those YouTube videos. And if you are not breaking your videos down critically like that, even if you don't have him do it or have somebody break your videos down, you're making a huge mistake in your shooting career. Because if you're not critical over your shooting, Mason's one of the best shooters I know. He's one of the most consistent shooters I know. And he's still talking about his flaws. And that's the only way I have discovered to get better in this sport, is to attack your flaws and not your greatness. And no matter how many times I've seen Mason shoot, he always finds something to get better. And I've never met any other shooters that is at this level that we're attacking all of our weaknesses. I never go and talk to a top guy and go, hell yeah, it was a perfect match, because there isn't one. So if you're not following along with what he's talking about and you're not attacking those weaknesses in those stages, you're really missing out on basically getting better. You're just out there shooting bullets at that point. So, but all right, well, Matt, give me yours. I know you gave him last time, but hit it again.
Hopkins_shooting on Instagram.
On Instagram. That's his jam right there, is Instagram. So,
yeah.
But make sure you guys go check those two guys out. If you guys have any questions, hit me up. If you guys are looking for classes, looking for online training, let me know. TCSAcoaching.com. See you on the range.